What made the Roman Empire so powerful? How did a small city in Italy rise to dominate the known world for over 1,000 years? Was it their unstoppable legions, their ruthless politics, or something even deeper? We're talking about an empire that built roads and aqueducts that still stand today. An empire that conquered vast territories and ruled over millions. How did they do it? What were the pillars of Roman power that allowed a relatively small group of people to dominate their world? Stick around because by the end of this video you'll understand exactly why Rome wasn't just powerful, it was nearly invincible. And trust me, history has never been this thrilling. Let's start with the most obvious reason. Rome had the greatest war machine of its time. The Roman legions weren't just an army, they were a force of nature. Think about it. Most of the armies Rome faced relied on a core of noble warriors, a relatively small warrior elite, backed up by large numbers of essentially untrained, poorly equipped farmers with spears. These armies were often large, but they were unwieldy, prone to panic, and easily routed if you could break them just once. The legions were different. Rome turned war into a science. Every legionary, at least in the early days of Roman expansion, was a citizen soldier. He owned land, he paid taxes, and he was expected to equip himself for war, equipping himself to a standard. These weren't just farmers with spears. These citizen soldiers trained relentlessly, drilled in formations and fought as a single disciplined unit. They were professional soldiers centuries before the concept of a professional soldier even existed. They drilled and trained constantly in peacetime. They lived by their own unique code of military discipline and were punished severely for transgressions. And they were good, really good. Even when Rome suffered devastating losses like at Cannae in 216 BCE when Hannibal wiped out nearly 50,000 Roman troops, a defeat of almost unimaginable proportions at the time, they didn't collapse. Can you imagine the Persian king Darius, after his defeat at Marathon, deciding to just raise another army to replace the one he lost? No, that defeat was the end of his ambitions in Greece, at least for a time. But Rome? They were just getting started. Instead of surrendering after Cannae, they rebuilt, rearmed, raised new legions, and came back stronger. They crushed Carthage in the Punic Wars, steamrolled Gaul under Julius Caesar, and by the time of Emperor Trajan, Rome stretched from Britain to the Middle East. What was their secret? Was it some unique Roman quality? Not at all. They were masters of adaptation. They copied the best tactics from their enemies, whether it was the Greek phalanx or the cavalry techniques of the Parthians. The Romans were never too proud to steal an idea if it worked, to learn from their enemies, to adapt, to change. But an army alone isn't enough to build an empire. Just ask Attila the Hun or Genghis Khan. You need more than that. You need the infrastructure of power. Rome didn't just fight better, they built better. They engineered over 250,000 miles of roads, many of which are still around today, at least in part. That meant troops could move faster, supplies could flow effortlessly, and trade could boom. Think about what that means for a minute. You've just conquered a new territory, maybe somewhere out in Gaul or Spain or North Africa, and your legions have moved on to the next conquest. Your enemies, though, they're still there, and they're not happy that you've taken over. But because of your roads, because of the speed and efficiency with which Rome can move men and material, if any trouble does erupt, it can be dealt with quickly and decisively. You can move legions to any point in the empire at a speed your enemies can only dream of. Then, there were the aqueducts. While other civilizations struggled to get clean water, Rome built massive water systems that supplied cities with fresh drinking water. Clean water equals a healthy population, and a healthy population means more soldiers, more workers, more taxpayers. And let's talk about Roman cities. They weren't just settlements, they were power centers. Rome was the first civilization to build large-scale apartments. They had central heating, public baths, and an advanced sewage system, while much of the world still relied on dirt roads and huts. That's not just power, that's next-level dominance, and that dominance, that display of wealth and engineering, it had a purpose. Imagine you're a chieftain from somewhere on the fringes of the Roman Empire and you and your warriors come to Rome, maybe to petition the emperor for assistance against some local enemy, or maybe to see about getting in on some of that sweet Roman trade. You and your men, you've never seen anything like Rome. The aqueducts, the paved roads, the forum, the sheer scale of it all. It would be like us going to an alien planet. The message is clear, and it's designed to intimidate. Rome is powerful, and you should think twice before crossing them. Of course, Rome wasn't just about brute strength. Their political system was built to last, at least for a while. The Roman Republic introduced checks and balances, ensuring no one man could seize total control, at least not permanently. Senators debated, laws were passed, and consuls ruled in pairs to prevent dictatorship. And for about 500 years, it worked. The Roman Republic, riven by class warfare, crippled by political violence, and seemingly always on the verge of collapse, somehow survived. But here's the catch, the thing that truly set Rome apart: Rome was flexible. When the Republic failed, when it became clear that the old system simply couldn't handle the vast empire Rome had become, they didn't collapse in on themselves, they didn't descend into generations of civil war and chaos. Instead, Rome reinvented itself as an empire. Julius Caesar, Augustus, and later emperors centralized power and ran the empire with military precision. When weak emperors like Nero or Commodus brought instability, strong generals stepped up. When Rome faced rebellions, they crushed them without mercy. Think about that. How many other civilizations do we know of that were able to make that kind of fundamental change without collapsing? How many others could have transitioned from a republic to an empire without tearing themselves apart? That level of political resilience, that ability to adapt to changing circumstances, to meet challenges head-on and overcome them, that's what made Rome a superpower for centuries. But you can't run an empire on war alone. You need money, lots and lots of money. And Rome had it. Rome was an economic powerhouse. With a vast trade network stretching from Britain to Egypt, Roman coins became the dollar of the ancient world. They controlled the Mediterranean, literally called Mare Nostrum or Arsi, ensuring trade flowed smoothly. Imagine having access to silk from China, spices from India, and grain from Egypt all flowing into Rome. That's economic muscle on a global scale. But Rome's economy wasn't just about trade. Any empire can trade, but not every empire can build the infrastructure needed to support that trade and to profit from it. Rome could, and did. They taxed their provinces, not necessarily at exorbitant rates but consistently. They understood that a steady stream of revenue was better than trying to bleed their provinces dry. They built roads and ports, as we've discussed, supply chains that fueled massive cities, and created a financial system that kept the empire running for centuries. And don't forget about slavery. Slavery was an integral part of the Roman economy, providing the labor for everything from agriculture to mining to construction. It was a brutal system, but it was also an efficient one, and it helped to make Rome the wealthiest empire the world had ever seen. But what do you do with all that wealth? Sure, you can use it to build palaces and fight wars, but Rome understood that true power, lasting power, came from something more. And finally, Rome didn't just conquer land, they conquered minds. They understood that real power, lasting power, came not from the point of a sword, but from the things that bind a people together: shared culture, shared beliefs, a shared sense of identity. Latin became the language of law, politics, and philosophy. Even today, our governments, legal systems, and even the very alphabet you're reading come straight from Rome's playbook. Rome understood the power of entertainment. The Colosseum could hold 50,000 spectators, showcasing brutal gladiator battles and massive naval reenactments, all to keep the people entertained and loyal. These events were more than just entertainment, though. They were carefully crafted propaganda, designed to reinforce the idea of Roman power and dominance. What better way to show the people how strong you are than to stage a massive naval battle in the middle of the city? And here's something wild: Rome's vast infrastructure, its roads, its sea lanes, its very size, helped spread Christianity, which started as a small movement in a remote corner of the empire and became one of the most influential religions in history. Even after Rome fell, its culture never died. It shaped the Renaissance, influenced the founding fathers of the US, and still echoes in the way we think about power and civilization today. Roman law, Roman engineering, Roman literature, these things didn't just disappear when the legions marched home for the last time. They continued to influence the development of Western civilization for centuries, even to this day. So why was Rome so powerful? Because they mastered war? Because they built an empire of stone and steel? Because they played politics like chess? Because they dominated the economy? Because they left a legacy so strong we're still living in its shadow? They weren't just a civilization, they were the civilization. And while the empire itself fell, crippled by corruption, weakened by barbarian invasions, and finally overrun by forces it had once held at bay with ease, in many ways, Rome never truly died. It lives on in our language, our laws, our architecture, even in our entertainment. If you've made it this far, you're now part of history's elite. Drop a comment with your favorite Roman fact and don't forget to subscribe because the story of power is far from over.